uncontrolled circle that you don't realize.
Right, right. And the secret there, it's exactly it. The secret here is this, if you just, that's a very effective way to get someone into a cult, is to control all of these things. The cult mentality. There was a psychologist, a Yale psychologist in the 1970s who did a study about this, that when you create an environment for yourself where everyone thinks the same, that the decisions that you make will actually be much, much worse than if you had diversity in thought. And so it's groupthink is that idea. And so when people are locked in this, where the team that they're a part of is kind of all one source, one environment, then their decision making actually declines in an environment like that. But the cool thing about this is that people have choices to make. Like I mentioned before, you can add teachers, you can diversify the leaders, teachers, and mentors that you have. You can be parts of lots of different communities, not just your workplace, not just your business, but be parts of different groups. And then you can attend events. Events are important because they break you out of a routine. And so for a person to have different events to attend, they break the routine. They actually open your mind to different possibilities. And then the person that they want to be, the person that they want to grow into, can be the sum of all of those things. So this is a very simple tool, very simple idea. But this idea of the whole team for a leader, for leading a successful team, is just being aware of that. Are you in a position to where you are, for the people on your team, you're the only person in that box? Or for the people on your team, these are the only things that they're involved in. So the options that you have there is you can be the end-all, be-all for the people on your team, but it's not really a formula success for you. It's very taxing. So the things that you can do to set up a successful team is encourage them to be parts of have different leaders and mentors. So doing things like networking is great for your team. Where a lot of leaders might trip up is when they get insecure about their level of influence over someone. And so these are great things for me to coach around with leaders, because it's evaluating, having team members have mentors and coaches from other businesses or other companies. What does that do for the person who they report to? Is it triggering certain feelings of insecurity? So this is where adding diversity and thought is great for your team. And so it's not all about delivering all education, all influence, and be the only community that your teams are a part of, your team members are a part of. But how can you add diversity into their life experience so that they can be whole people, part of a whole team, and that doesn't have to come from one company. So the three teams here. So a successful team really consists of that, is managing that first team, those three roles inside of you, and understanding how you play those different roles, and how do you understand those different roles on your team? How can you relate to them? How can you empathize with what their needs are? The next team, not being too overwhelmed with a big picture, pushing yourself to come up with a big vision for your company, but how do you focus then on what the next right next steps are? What is that next team that we're focused on and driving towards? And then the whole team, how do we make sure that the people on my team, including yourselves, are part of different communities, so that you're not just in a vacuum of influence, that you can be a whole person. So that's not the face of a man that you would imagine worked 2 jobs for 30 years. The cool thing that I learned from my dad, is that he knew which team was his primary. He was the CEO and chief of our family, and he had, raising 5 boys. You'd imagine he'd be pretty strict, but he was also kind and forgiving. When he passed away on May 9th, 2020, my mom said that he passed away, and he said, "Mission complete." He didn't have much. He lived in the same home that he bought within that first year of landing. I learned later on that his experience was actually pretty rough when he started. He made his way up to the management track, not in one company, 2 companies. And my mom told me stories about him making his way up in those companies, that he faced racism, that people would make fun of his accent. and he was passed up for promotions for years. Even though he was the most skilled, talented, able engineer in the company, he was passed up for promotion for years because of his accent. But my dad knew why those sacrifices were worth it. I reflect on these stories and I reflect on these tools because what I believe is that the work to lead a great team doesn't need to be complicated. My dad was a modest man. He was a very modest person. The things that I've done with teams, the way that I've helped companies has been, I've been able to help lots of different companies, not from the things I've learned as a leader now, but the things that I learned from my dad, that those things, all of these principles at work helped me to help those companies. So it's great to be aware of those three teams. This is just a resource that I provide through my business. I'd love to be connected with other professions that would be interested in this, but I blueprint businesses. I use those same structures so that leaders can see their business in a new light. Managers and leaders can understand their teams and be able to see clearly those opportunities for them to improve and expand their team. So this is just a service that I provide. And lastly, if my computer will, awesome. So thank you very much for celebrating this milestone for my family. And thank you so much for your attention and allowing me to share ideas with you that have really made a huge difference for me and the clients and the teams that I've worked with. My hope for you sincerely is the extreme success, the kind of success that enabled my dad and my family to have a home within 1 year of landing in the United States, when even our own family counted us out and said that they're never going to go anywhere and they'll probably live in an apartment their whole lives. Someone out there had faith in my dad. Someone out there gave my dad a chance and guided him well. And he was so proud of that house. And so I wish for all of you and the work that you do, the kind of success that gives people hope. Ultimately, there's a lot of people like me who do the work that I do. The thing is that when they make the work of being successful sound very complicated, is that they're actually killing hope in a way. My goal is to make these ideas accessible and simple, and to help increase the hope in the world. So thank you so much for your time. I would love to entertain any questions if you have them. Yes.
How would you bridge that gap from current situation of the team to the future? How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah.
Like, what do you look in that moment to fix it?
Yeah.
Specifically.
So I'm going to go back to that diagram. That's a great question. So the question was how to bridge that gap from the current to the future specifically. So I'm going to refer to two diagrams actually. So the first one is this one. So this how to bridge the gap between current and future. So part of it is understanding what is the sequence between the systems that are at play. So the marketing and sales, your delivery, and your financial system. What's the sequence of change that needs to happen? And come up with an idea of what needs to happen first. What's that next change that will enable that? So this is where, remember the first diagram that I changed about your first team, your team of three. So that's the work of the manager to decide that. So the entrepreneur, the executive will come up with this big idea, but it's up to the manager to say, well, in order to achieve that, this is what it means for us to do in the next 2 months, the next 6 months, whatever it is. It's to commit to that. And then once you achieve that, what's the next thing that happens? What's the next thing that happens? So it's iteration. And different teams have a different tolerance for change. And so this has to be right for your team's level of tolerance for change. So even if it's just one thing, if it's just improving one thing in marketing and sales, and if you achieve that, it enables like expanding delivery on things or something like that, or expanding delivering on a more expensive product so that you can expand how much revenue you're bringing in financially. So even if it's just one thing, the key idea here is identify what is that one change or that small set of changes that you can commit to achieve that and move on to the next team. Does that make sense? Did that kind of answer your question?
So how they know what are those changes? Like
Yeah.
how they can
That,
they know that.
that's part of why I do the blueprint my
Oh, it's
business.
Like you help them to,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyone can do that. I think a lot of if you understand your business in terms of your marketing and sales systems, how you deliver your product and service, and then your financial and legal systems, that's what I help leaders do. Is if they don't have a handle on how to account for those things and see what the opportunities are for improving that. But that's really the idea. There is audit your systems. See, it's great if you have access to your metrics. Like, what part of your system do you want to improve first? And for a lot of people, the obvious one will be, I want more revenue. What does that mean in terms of how does your revenue currently come in? What does that mean in terms of the delivery of your product and service? Like, if we pro forma all of that, what does that mean for then? What did it take in the marketing and sales side to generate all of that delivery? So that's a way to look at it, is understanding that the entirety of those systems, and then figure out which pieces need to improve first to reach your goals. Creating a roadmap for that.
Yeah.
Great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Chef T. Yes.
So, Ray.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, technicians, and management at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm speaking directly about this is my own business.
Yeah.
And sometimes you go back to the word overwhelmed.
Yep.
Right? The feeling of overwhelmed is pretty common, but it's also temporary.
Yep.
Right? The feeling you're overwhelmed today, and then you started figuring things out, and you start getting better about
Right.
controlling how you feel overwhelmed.
Right.
How are the blueprint strategies helping us to say, you know what, you don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to stop being a technician, and the problem is you're just a technician, you're just managing yourself.
Right.
And then you're going to cut yourself a break when you're not able to do a lot of things, or something wrong happens. How does a blueprint will guide the entrepreneur to understand that, you know what, there's time to be a technician, there's time to manage, and this is the strategies that will work for you to exit. Almost like an exit plan from your daily understanding of what the business is.
Yeah. You guys want to know a secret that's kind of funny about that? Is that 80% of the benefit of doing something like this is just writing it down. Some of the exhaustion that executives feel is that they don't write down their ideas and turn them into commitments. And so there is such thing psychologically as ego depletion. Have you guys heard of that term? So ego depletion is essentially the idea is that we have a fixed capacity for making decisions. So you'll notice that if you meet with people early in the morning, they tend to make better decisions. But if you get them nice and tired, you can probably get people to make poor decisions in the evening. This is why a lot of people have bad habits late at night. If they work late at night, they're usually eating junk food, something like that. Ego depletion. So a very simple thing to do is to write down those plans, turn them into commitments, so that, and that's why I said with that first team, the idea of your spending time as an entrepreneur, it's not just thinking. Cap it at an hour or a whole day every month where you just focus on those things, and then write it down and commit to those things, so that you know that when you look at it, I'm not thinking about this again. I'm not recommitting to these things. I committed to these things, and give that executive, that entrepreneur version of yourself, a break. So when it keeps coming back, it's usually because people don't write it down. They haven't changed. They haven't turned their plans into something that's concrete. And so there's that anxiety that even though you've thought through it, there's this anxiety like if I don't keep thinking about it, I'll forget it. A lot of it just comes down to writing it down. Yeah.
That's true. And I noticed that we definitely do record a lot of our goal settings.
Yeah.
That's actually happening right now.
Awesome.
Right? It's actually
Yep.
quarterly goal settings.
Yep.
And the thing is, we gotta learn how to not
be in control of everything, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta trust people, and especially in our situation is that it's husband and wife. You know, nobody cares as much as we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's hard.
That's the mentality that I think that you should instill in the second team.
Yeah.
Right. And something that we believe that we need to have there's room for improvement in. Is that part of the blueprint?
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing too. So there's a challenge with, and this happens with businesses of all sizes. It could be a small enterprise to a multi-billion-dollar startup. That the founder's mentality, that it doesn't translate to your managers and the people that you hire after. So as a founder, you're willing to sacrifice things that most people aren't. That's just a fact. You will give more of your life for your own business, something you've created, it's your baby. But how do you instill that in your team? You can't ask the people that you hire to have that same level of sacrifice, right? You can't ask for a blank check to say that at a drop of a hat, I'll need you to drop everything for this because this is my life. This is everything to me. So how do you set that up for success? So this goes back to that idea of the first team. So if it's a technician or the manager, how do you set up that agreement? What's the minimum effective dose of instruction that you need to give that manager or the technician to say, this is what I need for you to be able to do a good job, and I'll equip you to do that. But if you're asking for that blank check to say, I need to do anything, that's where it's being set up really not for success, is where you can't really pass on that mentality of the founder without them actually being a founder. So people might go to the extremes of saying, I'll cut you in as a co-founder if you can be as committed, but you can't do that for your entire team, right? So it's about those clear commitments. Gallup have you guys heard of Gallup? It's a survey company, national survey company. They do surveys. They've been doing surveys, I think, for about 100 years. And they survey the entire nation, population, businesses. And one of the things that they studied over 100 years is well-being, this idea of well-being, people being, doing well. One of the factors that's most important in general well-being for people is a good job. They just want to be able to show up and do a good job. And so the idea here is that you can build a team with agreements where you enable people to just show up and do a good job. They don't need to be like founder level committed to do a good job. So how can you set up a successful team so that it's based on clear commitments and clear agreements, clear expectations? And then if there is a need to expand and people who are more all in, then that's when you start to look at compensation and how do you get them more bought into sacrificing more. So did that answer it? Did I totally miss that one? Okay.
Yeah, we're definitely it really makes a lot of sense because that's why we have consultants, is because we open this business thinking like, oh well, we can control it, we do everything, but it grows on its own.
Yeah.
Right? And it grows like up and wide. And sometimes you don't feel like you want the right people.
Right.
But it takes time to build that relationship.
Yeah. There's a whole other realm of hiring for culture, hiring right, and that is a thing. But the thing that I'm asserting here with these ideas that foundationally, that if you're not setting up the roles within the team well, it doesn't matter if you can hire a rock star, you're probably more likely to set someone up for failure than success if we're not addressing these fundamentals. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes.
So focusing on the entrepreneur side of
Yes.
things, so you thought about it, you've written them down, now you're committed. Day 1 versus day 365, accountability, working your way through it. How does that happen, or do you set benchmarks to get there? What does that look like?
Yeah, so that's that conversation with that manager function, right? So the entrepreneur has done the work of setting the vision, and now it's to kick in the manager side. So if the entrepreneur is also the manager side, then it is that. How do you know that a good job is being done? It's defining that. What does a good job look like across all of these functions? What would I see if that person was doing a good job? It's the metrics. People can set up dashboards. It can be meetings, check-ins, things like that. So it's whatever the method is right for the business or the specific business. There's lots of businesses that can be very data-driven, where you see if things are happening. You see transactions as they're happening. So how it's answering that question as the manager to say, these are things that I would pay attention to, like my KPIs. These are things that I would pay attention to know if my business is healthy. So that's the work of the managers is setting that. What's the right frequency? How often you do that will be based on how much control you need to have over your business and to be able to introduce changes to change the behavior of your business. But did I generally answer in the right space that you were looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
So collectively, you either have that individually when you first start off,
Right.
and as you move through phases, then you split that responsibility to have.
Right. And then you pass on those processes, those same definitions to somebody on your team instead of yourself. And those three categories, those three systems: the marketing, sales, delivery, financial systems. Right. So you'll have different metrics that drive each, and there's a connection between the three. It's knowing which metrics matter for each and what they mean for a good job. How do you know that a good job in each of those categories is being done? Yeah. I love talking. I don't know. Is there something else that we want? All right. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your time and attention.